think I consider myself a comparative biomechanist and also a muscle physiologist. I think that both of those kind of encompass what I do. I study how animals move by looking at how their muscles work. Yeah, so generally what my experiments would look like is we would take an animal and then we would figure out, okay, what muscle is important for the behavior that they're doing. So most of my cases are, I look at jumping frogs, and so it's often the case that their calf muscle is the one that's really important, or it's one of the ones that is really important. And so we can take that muscle and then we could put little sensors on it and put it into a setup like this one actually that's right behind me. And so there's a couple of pieces in this, one of the major ones is this box here. It actually can measure how much force the muscle is generating. And so that can tell us a lot of really important things about how the muscle behaves. Through these experiments, we can really see how does this muscle work, and if the muscle were to be used at its best, what could it do? And so this gives us a sense of how animals are moving, and are they moving as best as they could, or are they not? So the specific area that I'm researching is looking at the interactions between muscles, the elastic tissue that it's surrounded by, and how these interactions result in these fast behaviors. And so for one of my chapters, I looked at it across the different species of frogs. And so the idea is that if you're using these elastic structures to produce really fast movements, then you want to make sure that the properties of both the muscle and the elastic structure are tuned to each other so that you can maximize the usage. And so across species of frogs, they perform different behaviors. So you have frogs that can dig, frogs that can climb trees, frogs that can swim really well. And so how do those different behaviors that they're able to perform affect their ability to tune these different structures that are important for this really fast behavior? So I think, the most basic answer is that doing basic research is just in general one of the important things, because we know very little about how biology works and even how the world works, and so just learning as much as we can. But I think that my work in particular is getting at how animals can produce really fast movements, and although frog jumps are not the fastest movements, they are within the spectrum, and they are actually within organisms that are moving from really fast behaviors to animals, to larger animals that really can't achieve those movements as fast as others. And so they kind of give us a broader understanding of how that works. Then in my second chapter, I kind of looked at more of the how the interactions between the structures, again the muscle and the elastic tissue, but then also how the mass of the animal affected their ability to interact with each other. And for that experiment, it was really cool because we were able to use a live muscle and integrate it with a model to really probe at those dynamics without having the complexity of the whole animal kind of introducing variation. I think that this research would be applicable mainly to, or at least in my case, it's more applied to animals that move fast. And so one thing that I didn't mention was that, so we have a muscle that we're looking at, but it also interacts with a lot of the tissue surrounding it, and that tissue tends to be elastic. And so the muscle can actually use the elasticity of those structures to store energy into it, kind of like a bow, using a bow to launch an arrow. And so we can think about how these animals are using those structures to produce movements that might exceed what the muscle could do by itself. I think that not necessarily my research or the work that I do, but I think that there are people that work within this field that specifically probe at those questions about muscle aging and how, as the muscle ages, what changes within its structure that results in decreased muscle performance and that sort of thing.